What's up, you guys? This is Devin from CenturyFX Studios, and we're back with another video. Today we're going to be talking about the Canon 90D and what you know it's going to have in store, or what you might think it's going to have in store. Alright, so for those of you who don't know, the double-digit series D cameras for Canon, they are basically the intermediate camera. They have a lot of features that make them compelling to buy, but they don't have the best image quality, they don't have the best frames per second, and they don't have the best low light noise production of imagery. So when you have to think about this camera, you have to think about who it is basically sold for. When you're thinking about this new camera, you have to think about who it's sold for and why they're selling it, so you'll understand what they're going to put in it. So first off, I want to explain the cameras in the past, and then I'll tell you who it's going to be geared for and why they're going to put the specs in it that they are. All right, back in the day, we had the 60D. This is probably still a popular or decently popular camera based off its price and based off of how old it is. The 60D was a great camera. It came out right around the time the 5D Mark II was out, or before or after, I don't really know, but it had a Philip LCD screen. It was great on video and great on pictures. A lot of people loved this camera for that. The only thing it didn't have was autofocus and video, but a lot of people loved the 60D for all the things that it offered. And it was like a small 5D Mark II, a small 5D Mark I with 1080p video and all the features you would want out of a camera. People probably still buy it to this day because logging is so good. But you don't have autofocus video, so it makes it a kind of a bad vlogging camera because you can't tell what you're focusing on, and you don't want to spend all that time messing with the out of focus image versus the in focus image, all of this stuff. So the 60D got phased out pretty fast once autofocus and video was needed, and then you got to the 70D. The 70D brought dual pixel AF focus to the double digit D series cameras. I know the T4i had it too, a couple of other cameras had it too, but the dual pixel autofocus in the 70D was legendary. A lot of people loved the dual pixel autofocus. This was probably one of the first really good autofocusing cameras in the DSLR lineups for Canon. So a lot of people loved the 70D for what the 60D couldn't do. It was a really good upgrade, really good choice. Sensor change from about 18 megapixels to 20 point something megapixels. It was really close to the 70 Mark II sensor. And a lot of people were saying it's not exactly like the 70 Mark II sensor, but you really couldn't tell the difference as far as image quality in the 70D and the 70 Mark II. So with that being said, the frames per second was boosted up. I think the 60D had something like a 4 or 5 frames per second rate, while the 70D had a 6 or 7 frames per second rate. And then it was close to the 70 Mark I. Again, the 70 Mark I had 8 frames a second, so the 70D had around 7 frames a second. Then we go to the 80D, which is awesome in its dual pixel autofocus, advancing what was already great in Canon. That dual pixel autofocus, or AF in video, is just great. A lot of people don't give it enough credit. I've seen it in action. You can touch the screen on the 80D now, so you can follow focus a lot better than you could before. Bang, bing, bop, boom, 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 bop. You could do pretty much anything a cinematic focuser can do. It's all that's great on the 80D. It has a really good image sensor with I think it's a 24.3 megapixel sensor with some nice low light shots you can get out of it. It's really, if not surpassing the 70 Mark II, it's great. It is a great camera. It just kind of edged out the 70 Mark II instead of trying to match it. It kind of edged it out, and it also has dual pixel autofocus like the 70 Mark II. But the 70 Mark II, now that the image quality is inferior to the 80D, you kind of lean on, okay, what does it have that the 80D does have? You start to think about it does have a touchscreen, but it does not have a flip out LCD screen on the 70 Mark II. So you start to think more about the 80D because the 80D started to edge the 70 out a lot. But the 70 is a sports camera, so it has, a lot of frames per second, 10 frames a second, where the 80D only has about 7 and a change, a little bit more than 7, a little bit, So it kind of edges out the 70 Mark II, but it's not on that level quite yet. But it does rival some full frame cameras like the 5D and the 6D in image quality. So a lot of people love the 80D. It's probably one of Canon's most popular cameras next to the 5D Mark IV. As a matter of fact, it will be a perfect secondary camera to the 5D Mark IV because the image quality does not differentiate that much. So you don't have to worry about a big fluctuation in image quality. You can keep your edits and your images looking great as far as image quality if you match it with the 5D Mark IV for image quality. So now that we got the 60D, the 70D, the 80D out of the way, pretty much these are the general specs on them. Flip out LCD screens, touch screens now, good image quality, good frames per second, nice price. I didn't mention that before, but nice price on these cameras. They're pretty much baby full frame cameras with a whole bunch of luxuries that the full frame cameras don't get because they need to be weather sealed and stuff like that. For example, the 80D has a flip out LCD screen that's touch, and you can do all the touch screen capabilities, but you cannot do that on the 1DX Mark II, which is the top of the line for Canon. You can't do this with the 5DSR, which is the 50 megapixel beast from Canon in full frame. You can't do all of that stuff on the bigger series cameras. So this is ideal for somebody who is a full frame camera shooter who doesn't have a flip out LCD screen, because if I'm not mistaken, the only full frame camera that has a flip out LCD screen is the 6D Mark II, which just came out, if not 2 years ago. And we've been having 4K and 1080p in all of our cameras. We don't get any of that in our Canon cameras, especially not full frame, except the 2 new cameras that came out this year, which is the 1DX Mark II and the 5D Mark IV. So there's a lot of discrepancy between the, the actual specs and stuff like that in Canon cameras. That's why Canon keeps their smaller line filled and packed full with features and stuff like that the full frame cameras don't have, like flip out LCD screens and fully compatible touch screens, because the 1DX Mark II does not have that, and I'm highly disappointed. But all that being said, the 90D, what is it gonna have in it? The 90D should have 4K. It should have a flip out LCD screen, fully compatible with all the touch features, if not better than the last one in the 80D. It should have a better focusing system, which that goes without saying. I wish the focusing points, if not 45, 62, 61, but I want all the focus points all over the screen. This will help me focus on all the portraits, anything else I need to focus on that's out in the outer area of the lens. I can focus on everything that I can see in my eyepiece. It's a DSLR. We still got those optical eyepieces, but we can't use all the focus points in them, so we have to move the camera sometimes to get focusing. A lot of times we miss focus with our prime lenses. I mean, we have this smaller sensor body in the 90D and the 80D and the 70D and the 60D. It's a APS-C size body. It's 1.6x crop from the full frame, so we're not going to get the most image quality. We're not going to get the best low light, so we're going to use a prime lens to try to match the full frame quality. Our 1.8s, our 1.4s, and our 2.8 lenses, so it'll let more light in and we can get comparable images to our full frame bodies. But if we're not able to focus at those shallow apertures like 1.2, 1.8, 1.4, then there's no use in taking the picture, because we'll have an out of focus picture that won't help our image quality or our images. We'll just throw that image away because it's not in focus, because our cameras don't have the focus points all the way out there on the edges of the screen, and not all of them are cross type, so they don't work as good as the other ones. So whatever Canon can do to get those focus points all over the sensor so we can focus like the Sony cameras can do, the A6500 and the A7R Mark III has this eye tracking focus thing where anytime you have any lens on there, it will track the eye, and it's awesome. I've seen Manny Ortiz use it a lot in his videos, Beards and Gears videos. Go check him out. He uses it a lot. But that eye tracking autofocus, it takes our mind off of the camera being able to perform accurately, and we can focus on our model, our image, our composition, everything about the image, about being an author and being creative in the image, instead of worrying about the inferiority of our camera and whether it's going to be able to focus. So have some kind of technology, Canon, that will match Sony's eye tracking motions and their focus modes. All right, so the 5D Mark II came out in 2008. That was 10 years ago. That same 1080p standard that Canon has, it's still in the same cameras after a decade. 10 years with 1080p. And I believe that was the first DSLR with 1080p on the Canon end. 10 years they've been working on 4K, but they haven't really put it out in many cameras for Canon. And the ones they have put it out in, you got this terrible codec or coding or format that when you get the 4K file out of the camera, it's double the size of any other regular 4K file. And then you might not even be able to use it in your linear editor or whatever you're editing in, because that motion JPEG is so I digress. But we really want Canon to put 4K in the 90D. We want Canon to put 4K in any other cameras that they're deciding to bring out. Those features from the full frame cameras like the 5D Mark IV and the 1DX Mark II, usually trickle down to the 7D Mark III if it comes out, and the 90D, what we're talking about today. So if you had a 4K camera in the 90D, which I really think Canon is going to do because it's way overdue, I think the 70D should have had 4K in it if Canon was really competing. But I want to know, Canon used to be known for edging people out in video, and they still kind of are with the dual pixel autofocus, but people don't have 4K, and people are usually saying, oh, why you need 4K, it takes up too much memory and stuff like that. Yes, and I think that's pretty much the Casey Neistat argument that people are using, that we don't really need 4K, but we need to have the option to have 4K. It's like having a 50 megapixel camera. You don't necessarily need 50 megapixels, but you can always trim that that resolution down. You can go down to another resolution in the 5DSR. You don't have to shoot 50 megapixels, but you have the option if you feel the need to. That's the main point. Because there's a lot of benefits to shooting with more megapixels, like 4K and 50 megapixels. Because if you shoot with more megapixels, you're able to stabilize in video. Because if you stabilize with a warp stabilizer in video in post, what it's going to do is chop the image in, and it's going to give you less resolution. As a trade-off, you'll have a smoother video. If you're able to use a stabilizer to get your 4K footage, just know that when you go out and you're going to have shaky footage, shoot a little bit wider. Then crop that image in. You'll still have a really, really nice image, but it'll be stabilized. And people will be like, wow, how did you get this stable footage without a stabilizer or anything like that? I know you've been having trouble with stable footage. Well, I shot it 4K and I just cropped some of it in, and I just, exported it in whatever size I needed, 1080p. And you don't even know what I was shaking in that video. Or you can cut in, cut away, do whatever you need to with your 4K footage to make your footage look better. You know what I'm saying? If you cut away, or if I do a jump cut right here, I could come in closer to keep that attraction and appeal to my video. There's a whole bunch of things. And then when you're looking at the video 10 years from now, you can be like, oh, daggone. People have 5K and 6K now, and maybe even 8K. And Canon still had those 1080p cameras that we're looking at. And then you're going to get kind of upset because it's going to look inferior to the newer things that are out at the time 10 years from now. As a professional photographer or even a hobbyist, you want to master what you create in the highest form possible. Think about all the things that are on TV now. They're probably shooting whatever you're seeing in a higher resolution than you used to seeing it in, because they can master it in different ways down the line. So if you're seeing a video on the TV in 1080p, they're probably shooting it in 4K and storing it in 4K for the years to come. So now they can master it in Blu-ray and stuff like that. And when people see it, it doesn't look out of date. It looks like, wow, where did they get this footage from? Well, they've been shooting it at a higher resolution all along, so they can prepare for the future and things of that nature. So there's a lot of reasons why you might want to get 4K, because you might want to have footage that just looks better. And Canon has really good sensors when it comes to color, skin tones, and all of these things. So if you had a 4K sensor behind that nice color science and all that stuff, you would be able to appreciate Canon even more. So I really think Canon doesn't have room to fail if they put a 4K in the 90D. Even if it's motion JPEG, even if it takes a whole bunch of memory and space like that, see if we can find a way for our card slots, our SD card slots, to handle the 4K and put 4K in the 90D. There's no reason why we can't have 4K in the 90D. With all that being said, guys, I'm done with CenturyFX Studios, and have a good day.